The warehouse buzzed with a rhythm of urgency. Forklifts beeped, boots thudded against the concrete floor, and voices shouted over the clang of metal pallets. Jack Monroe tightened his grip on a worn pair of work gloves as he stepped inside, the smell of motor oil and cardboard wrapping around him like a punch. Day 4. He had washed dishes. He had shelved books in a library. Now he was in a place that demanded brute force. No one here cared what medals he once wore on his chest, or how many years he served. All that mattered was how fast he could load, lift, and stack without getting someone hurt. A burly man in an orange vest handed Jack a clipboard and nodded toward the unloading zone. "You're on Bay 3. Unload, check, stack. Crates are 50 to 60 pounds. You good?" Jack nodded stiffly. His knees ached just looking at the size of the truck pulling in. But he said nothing. Pride was a dangerous thing to bring into a warehouse. He stepped into position, eyeing the first stack of shrink-wrapped crates.
No mechanical lift.
This was pure human labor. He bent his knees, grabbed a crate, and felt the weight pull at every tendon in his back. 55 pounds, he guessed. Not the heaviest he'd ever lifted, but heavier than his current body wanted to remember. He shuffled backward, placing the first crate on the loading pallet, then returned for the second. By the third, his breath came shorter. By the fourth, a sharp bolt danced up his spine. Jack paused, trying to hide his struggle. Sweat had already soaked through the back of his shirt, even though it was only 8:45 a.m. Behind him, someone chuckled. "You stack like someone who used to lead troops but forgot what manual labor feels like," a deep voice said.
Jack turned.
A tall, broad-shouldered black man stood nearby, arms crossed, expression calm but unreadable. He wore a reflective vest like the others, but his had a name tag clipped to the collar. M. Langley, floor supervisor. Jack forced a breathless smile. "You're not wrong." Langley stepped forward and effortlessly lifted the crate Jack had been eyeing. He set it down with a practiced ease that came from hundreds, maybe thousands, of repetitions. "I used to be worse," Langley added, wiping his hands. "Because I wasn't just out of shape. I was living behind those delivery trucks right there." Jack blinked. Langley gestured toward the back lot. 3 years, I slept out there. Rain, cold, rats, police wake-ups. I was a ghost in a city that never stopped moving." Jack didn't know what to say. "Now I'm the guy running morning shift. Funny how things change when someone gives you a chance." Langley smiled faintly. "Don't worry, old man. We'll get your form right. Your back will thank you." "Old man?" Jack let out a short laugh. "I'm only 56. Langley raised an eyebrow. "Warehouse years are like dog years. Every shift ages you double." They both laughed quietly, and in that shared moment, something passed between them. Two men who had both walked through fire in different forms. Jack picked up another crate. Slower this time.
Knees bent.
Back straight. Langley watched him for a few seconds, then clapped him lightly on the shoulder. "You're doing this the hard way. But I respect that." As Jack continued stacking crates, he couldn't stop thinking about what Langley had said. "I used to sleep behind those trucks." It wasn't just the weight of the crates Jack was lifting. It was the invisible weight of stories like Langley's, of the shame Jack carried from the things he couldn't fix, of the long road back to something that resembled a life. He wasn't just here to work. He was here to remember how to stand. Lunch break came like a ceasefire. A horn blared, and the buzz of machines dulled to silence as workers peeled off toward the side yard, where a battered picnic table and a few plastic chairs offered some semblance of rest. Jack found a spot on a concrete ledge near a stack of disused pallets. He unwrapped a modest sandwich from wax paper, flexing his fingers that now throbbed with a dull, rhythmic ache. The warehouse job was a different kind of war, one fought in silence, with gravity and repetition. Marcus Langley sat down beside him with a heavy thermos and a styrofoam container. "You don't bring protein, you'll be crawling by 3 p.m., Marcus said, popping open the lid. Inside, rice, eggs, and what looked like leftover chicken with hot sauce. Jack chuckled, taking a small bite of his own sandwich. I didn't think I'd need combat rations for warehouse duty. Marcus smirked. First-timers never do. But this place, it humbles everyone eventually. There was a pause between them. Not awkward, just honest. Then Marcus added, You ever been homeless? Jack blinked at the suddenness of the question. I don't mean sleeping in your car once. I mean months.
Years.
No address. Nowhere you're welcome. Jack shook his head.
No.
But I've been lost in other ways. Marcus nodded, chewing slowly.
Yeah.
I figured. You got that look. Jack studied him. Beneath Marcus's confident demeanor was something deeper, like a scar that still itched, even after years of healing. 3 years on the street, Marcus said, almost offhand. Started when my mom died. She was the only anchor I had. I was already behind on rent, no job, and no one to vouch for me. I'd burned a few bridges. He sipped from his thermos. First week, I slept behind a Salvation Army. Second week, a stairwell near the old subway line. After that, it all blends together.
Cold nights.
Stolen shoes. Getting jumped for a sandwich. You learn to disappear. Jack was silent. He didn't want to interrupt. Funny thing. Marcus leaned back against the wall. It's not the hunger that kills you. Or even the cold. It's the silence. The way people stop seeing you. You pass someone and they look past your eyes. Like you're already dead. Jack felt a chill crawl under his skin. I started collecting cans. That gave me purpose. Goal for the day, 20 pounds of aluminum.
Kept me sane.
One day, I stumbled into this warehouse, looking for a soda machine to steal cans from. The supervisor at the time caught me, but didn't call security. Marcus smiled at the memory. He looked at me and said, You hungry, or do you want to work? Jack raised his eyebrows. And you took the job? I didn't even answer. Just followed him in. They gave me gloves and a vest that didn't fit, and I started pushing boxes. The next day, I showed up again. After a week, they told me to fill out a W-9. I didn't even have an address, but they figured it out. Marcus leaned forward, eyes locked on Jack's. I've been here 8 years. 3 as supervisor. I've trained everyone on this shift. But every morning I walk in, I still remember what it felt like to sleep next to rats. Jack nodded slowly, moved in a way he hadn't expected to be. Why are you telling me this? He asked quietly. Marcus took a deep breath. Because you look like someone who's starting over. And I know how damn hard that is. No one talks about the shame that comes with starting at the bottom when you used to stand at the top. He pointed to the bay doors. See those guys out there? That kid in the red hoodie was in juvie 2 years ago. That woman over by the forklift? Single mom of 3, lost everything in a flood. This place is full of stories like that. You'd never know it watching them stack crates, but they're fighting just to stay afloat. Jack swallowed the lump forming in his throat. You ever think about quitting? Every damn day. Marcus laughed. But then I remember that someone gave me a shot when I didn't deserve it. Now it's my turn to pass it on. They sat in silence for a moment, letting the noise of distant forklifts drift back in. Then Jack said, almost a whisper, I used to be a sergeant in the Marines. Had men under my command. Now I can barely lift a crate without my back giving out. Marcus looked at him, no surprise in his face. And yet here you are, still showing up. That's not weakness, Jack. That's courage. Jack stared at the ground. He hadn't told anyone that in a long time. He wasn't sure why he just had. Maybe it was the way Marcus spoke.
No piti. No sugarcoating.
Just honesty. Thanks, Jack murmured. Marcus nodded. Warehouse rules are simple. Show up. Work hard. Help the guy next to you. If you fall, fall forward. He stood, brushing crumbs from his pants. Brakes almost up. You and me. Let's stack base 6. I'll show you how to move smart, not just strong. Jack stood too, feeling the stiffness in his spine again, but this time, it didn't defeat him. It was just a part of the weight he carried. And now maybe not one he had to carry alone. The afternoon heat turned the warehouse into a furnace. Dust danced in shafts of light spilling through the loading dock skylights, and the concrete floor radiated warmth from the midday sun. Jack's shirt clung to his back, and his arms burned with effort, but he was still standing, still moving. He was on base 6 now, working side by side with Marcus. The stacking technique Marcus had shown him, foot placement, lift angle, crate rotation, was working. Jack wasn't fast, but he was efficient. And more importantly, his back was still intact. Rotate the box with your forearm, not your wrist, Marcus reminded him. Let the crate roll off your hip. Saves your spine a year's worth of pain. Jack grunted in acknowledgement and adjusted his grip. As he placed the crate on the upper shelf, a crash echoed from the far side of the warehouse. Everyone froze. A stack of beverage crates, maybe 5 feet high, had tipped over, scattering broken plastic and splattered orange soda across the floor. Standing near the mess was Rico, a lanky 20-something with a buzz cut and earbuds dangling from his shirt. His face was flushed, not just from exertion, but from embarrassment. Beside him, Luis, a stocky man in his 30s, was shaking his head angrily. I told you not to double-stack that load.
Luis snapped.
You don't listen, man. You're gonna get someone hurt. Oh, screw off, Rico shot back. You think you're in charge of me? You want to say that again? Luis stepped forward. Jack instinctively dropped the crate he was holding and jogged toward them. Other workers began to gather. Tempers flared in a warehouse faster than pallets on a forklift. Hey. Jack raised his voice, putting himself between the two men. Cool it down. This isn't worth it. But Rico was fired up. Who the hell are you? You just showed up, 3 days ago? You don't get to tell me anything. Luis took a step forward, fists clenched. Jack's hands were up, palms out. I'm not telling you anything, kid. I'm asking you not to make this worse. The shouting had drawn Marcus from base 6. He walked up calmly, not rushing, just deliberate. Rico turned and threw his hands in the air. Great, now here comes the boss. Marcus didn't yell. He didn't bark commands. He just walked right into the center of attention between Rico and Luis and looked each man in the eye. Anybody bleeding? He asked quietly. Neither answered. Anybody dead? A pause. Rico scoffed and looked away. Then we're not fighting, Marcus said firmly. Not in my warehouse. You don't have to like each other. Hell, you don't even have to talk to each other. But you will respect the work. Luis crossed his arms but didn't argue. Rico's defiance faded into something closer to regret. Marcus turned to Jack. Thanks for stepping in. Jack nodded. Didn't want anyone doing something stupid. Marcus looked back at Rico and Luis. Go cool off. 5 minutes. Come back with your gloves on and your mouths shut. They obeyed, like kids sent to opposite corners of a schoolyard. Once the crowd dispersed, Marcus knelt to pick up a broken plastic bottle. Jack knelt beside him. You handled that well. Marcus smiled faintly. You don't win arguments with volume. You win with gravity. Jack raised an eyebrow. Like crates? Marcus chuckled. Exactly. As they cleaned up the mess, Marcus glanced over at him. It's funny. Some guys walk in here thinking it's all about muscle. But I've seen the biggest dudes burn out the fastest. Why's that? Because this job's not about strength, it's about balance. If your head's not right, if your pride's too loud, you'll trip over your own damn shadow. Jack nodded slowly, watching the soda pool into the floor drain. You ever get in a fight here? He asked. Once, Marcus said. Back when I still had a chip on my shoulder and something to prove. Swung at a guy who bumped my shoulder during shift change. Got written up, almost fired. That's when I realized I was still surviving, not living. He wiped his hands on a rag and stood up. Now? I teach people how to lift pallets, but mostly, I teach them how to lift themselves. Jack looked at him, not with admiration, but with recognition. Because that's exactly what Jack was trying to do. The sun was beginning to sink when Jack stepped out the side exit of the warehouse. The loading docks behind him hummed with the final routines of the shift. Inventory sheets, clinking pallet jacks. Tired goodbyes. But Jack didn't head straight home. He walked to the far corner of the lot. where the concrete gave way to cracked gravel and the rusted skeleton of an old forklift sat like a forgotten monument. There, under the shade of a steel awning, Jack sat down and let the silence stretch. His body ached in ways he hadn't felt in years, muscles burning, fingers stiff, back sore. And yet, it wasn't the physical pain that weighed on him. It was the identity he kept trying to shed. He closed his eyes. In his mind, he was 26 again. In the desert, helmet tight, boots scorched, dust in every breath. A young private stood shaking in front of him, holding a jammed rifle. Jack had leaned in, calm and steady. Breathe. Just like we trained. You're not alone. He'd always prided himself on being that man, solid, commanding, in control. A leader. A protector. Now here he was, folding boxes, wiping sweat from his brow like a rookie, taking orders, making minimum wage. He picked up a pebble from the ground and rolled it between his fingers. When did I stop being him? He'd thought the hardest battles were the ones overseas, dodging mortars, carrying fallen brothers through firefights. But those wars had a start and an end. This one, this silent war of rebuilding, had no clear front line. He had medals, commendations, but none of them got him a job after he left the service. None of them taught him how to sit in an interview room without flinching at loud noises. None of them helped him explain why he slept on the floor instead of a bed. Jack leaned back and looked up at the sky, the edges of the clouds turning gold in the late light. Footsteps approached. Marcus. He carried 2 bottles of water and tossed one to Jack, who caught it with surprising reflex. Thought you might need that, Marcus said, settling down beside him. Thanks. They sat in silence a moment. Then Jack spoke. You ever feel like you've already lived the best part of your life? Marcus didn't answer right away. He cracked open his water bottle and took a long sip. Yeah, he said finally. I used to think that every damn day. Figured the most I'd ever be was a man people looked away from. Jack nodded. I was a sergeant. Had 80 men under me at one point. I used to give orders that saved lives. Now I get handed a broom and told to sweep spill zones. Marcus looked at him, not judging. Just listening. I'm not embarrassed by work, Jack continued. But there's a part of me that doesn't know who I am without the uniform. That uniform's part of your story, Marcus said. But it's not the whole story. Jack scoffed. Try telling that to the guy who stares back at me in the mirror. Marcus leaned forward, elbows on knees. You know what the difference is between a survivor and a victim? Jack shook his head. A survivor writes the next chapter. A victim rereads the last one until the pages fade. Jack took a long breath. The wind shifted slightly, cooler now, brushing sweat from his temples. I thought I was done, he said softly. When I left the VA last month, I didn't think I had anything left in me. But every morning, I wake up and somehow, just somehow, I show up. Marcus smiled. That's not just somehow, Jack. That's strength. Jack turned toward him. You know what no one tells you when you leave the service? What? That the hardest part isn't losing the uniform, it's losing the mission. Marcus was quiet a beat. Then maybe it's time to find a new one, he said. Jack stared at the horizon, where a faint orange glow still lingered. Maybe it is, he thought. He looked down at his hands, scarred, calloused. Older than he remembered. But they still worked. They still held weight. They still had purpose. Maybe this warehouse, this grimy, loud, chaotic place, maybe it wasn't the end of the road. Maybe it was the start of something smaller, quieter, but real. He didn't know if he'd be here in a week or a month. But today he was here. And that counted for something. The next morning, Jack arrived earlier than usual. The warehouse hadn't fully stirred to life yet. The first trucks were just rolling in. Lights buzzed overhead, casting long shadows across empty aisles. He slipped on his gloves, stretched his shoulders, and walked toward Bay 2. He wasn't told to start early. No one was watching. But something inside him had shifted. This time he wanted to show up. 15 minutes later, a young man with black hair and nervous eyes shuffled in, wearing a new reflective vest that looked 2 sizes too big. He glanced around uncertainly, gripping his ID badge like a lifeline. Jack approached. "First day?" he asked gently. The young man looked startled, then nodded.
Yeah, I'm Qua.
"Jack," he replied, offering a hand. "You on Bay too?" "Think so." Jack smiled. "Then we're teammates." Qua relaxed a little. "Here," Jack said, walking him over to the first stack. "These crates aren't just heavy. They're tricky. Let me show you the hip rotation trick Marcus taught me. Save my back more times than I can count." He walked Qua through the motions, how to pivot, where to brace, how to align the box before lifting. They did a few practice rounds together. Qua's movements were hesitant at first, but smoother with each repetition. "Better?" Jack asked,
Qua not that.
a smile breaking through. "Way better. Thanks, man." They got to work side by side. Later in the morning, Marcus passed by, doing his usual circuit. He paused when he saw Jack guiding Qua through a particularly awkward stack arrangement, gently, patiently, with none of the ego Jack once carried in uniform. Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Well, damn," he said, grinning. "You trying to steal my job, Monroe?" Jack wiped sweat from his brow and shrugged. "Kid's got potential. Just need someone to slow the game down." Marcus nodded, a flicker of something proud in his eyes. "Keep going like that. I might just let you lead Bay 2 next week." Jack laughed, not out of disbelief, but because a week ago, the idea would have sounded ridiculous. Now it felt possible. The shift passed quickly. There were no dramatic fights.
No heroic rescues.
Just sweat, coordination, and small victories, like fitting 3 rows of crates perfectly on a crowded rack, or finishing 10 minutes ahead of schedule. At lunch, Qua sat next to Jack without hesitation. "You used to do this kind of work before?" he asked between bites of rice and chicken. Jack shook his head. "Military. But this is new." "Well, you're good at it," Qua said sincerely. "Like, not just the work, but making it feel okay, you know?" Jack wasn't sure what to say to that. He wasn't used to being seen in that way. Not recently. By the end of the day, as the workers clocked out and the sun dipped low, Marcus approached again. He handed Jack a folded paper. "What's this?" Jack asked. "Addressed to a veteran support group," Marcus said. "They help me with housing stuff, therapy, and eventually job training. They don't do handouts, but they listen." Jack held the paper in his hand, studying the handwriting. "I don't have much to offer them," he said. "You got time."
And a story.
"That's enough." Jack nodded slowly. Before he left, Qua gave him a quick fist bump. "See you tomorrow?" "Wouldn't miss it," Jack replied. Tomorrow, the word stayed with him. For the first time in a long time, it didn't feel like a threat. It felt like a direction. The sun had already disappeared by the time Jack made it back to his room. The building was old, cracks in the walls, dim lights in the hallway, and the soft buzz of a broken vending machine echoing through the stairwell. He climbed the stairs slowly, every muscle protesting with fatigue. The ache wasn't sharp, though it was earned. It was the kind of pain that told him he had done something that mattered, even if no one else had noticed. Inside, the room was sparse. A bed with a sagging mattress, a desk with a single lamp, and a duffel bag he still hadn't unpacked fully. He sat down at the desk, turned on the lamp, and pulled out a spiral notebook. The cover was bent, the edges frayed. He'd had it since before his discharge. Most of the pages were blank. At the top of a fresh sheet, he wrote, "Day 4. He stared at the words for a long time. Then he began. "I spent the morning lifting crates that weighed more than some of the gear I carried through Fallujah. My back screamed, my arms shook, and my pride bruised a little more with each mistake. But I showed up. I met a young man named Qua. Nervous.
New.
Reminded me of the recruits I used to train. I saw his hands tremble when he picked up his first box, just like mine did 4 days ago. Funny how quickly things shift. I didn't give him a speech.
Didn't pull rank.
I just showed him what Marcus showed me." "Marcus?" Jack paused, his pen resting on the page. Then he kept writing. He told me he used to sleep next to rats. Now he manages a warehouse floor with the calm of a field medic. No shouting. No barking orders. Just gravity and presence. I don't know what he sees in me. But today he passed me a number. A place that helps veterans who got lost somewhere between homecoming and reality. I've been one of those.
Lost.
Quietly. No drugs. No alcohol. Just empty days. No direction. No mission. But today something shifted. Not everything, but something. I taught someone. I moved with purpose. I finished a shift and someone said, "See you tomorrow." And I didn't flinch. That hasn't happened in a long time. Jack leaned back in his chair, rubbing his eyes. The streetlight outside cast a soft, orange glow through the window blinds. He could hear a neighbor coughing in the next room. Someone's TV played a game show faintly down the hall. It wasn't quiet, but it wasn't lonely. Not like before. He stood, walked to the bathroom sink, and splashed water on his face. The mirror stared back at him, creases deeper than last year, silver strands in his beard more stubborn than ever. But his eyes, they looked different tonight. Less tired. More here. Back at the desk, he flipped the notebook to the inside cover. A quote he had scribbled months ago stared back at him. Start where you are. Use what you have. Do what you can. He smiled. It had sounded hollow when he first wrote it. Today, it felt earned. He returned to the page. I'm not the man I was in uniform. I don't want to be. That man was trained to survive. But now I want to live. He closed the notebook and placed it gently on the desk. Before climbing into bed, he reached into the side pocket of his duffel and pulled out a small metal object, a dog tag, dulled with time, edges smoothed by years of wear. He held it between his fingers, then placed it on the nightstand, not to forget, but to remember who he was and what he was becoming. He lay down, body sore, but breath steady. Outside, a breeze rattled the window screen. The warehouse would call again tomorrow. The crates would be just as heavy. But now he had something more than muscle to carry them. He had a reason. He had forward. And that, tonight, was enough.